Hey everyone, welcome back to the Convo Couch. It appears the U.S. knowingly targeted Soleimani while he was brokering peace talks. Let's break this down for a minute. Now, Al Jazeera is a Kuwaiti newspaper, and in 2018, they claimed that the U.S. had given Israel a green light to assassinate Soleimani. Now, this was a claim that is now 2 years old. And it didn't really get too much traction back then. Now, from what we know that this conflict going on with Iran and the U.S. has been ongoing since the removal of the Shah. After a already thwarted attempt to assassinate Soleimani 3 years prior in 2015. And this happened near Damascus. And the United States reportedly broke that when they warned the Iranian leadership of this plan. And this revealed that Israel was closely looking directly at Soleimani, who was the Iranian general at that point. On October 2017, if we recall, Trump made the infamous speech in which he decided that Obama's Iran nuclear deal was a terrible idea. He called it the worst idea, and he said that had failed. And he announced that he wouldn't be recertifying the deal. He then went on to outline a whole new sort of tougher approach. He imposed sanctions directly on Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps. And then on December 6th, he declared Jerusalem the capital of Israel. Now, according to the report originally in the Times of Israel, which is very, very pro-Israel, on December 12th of that year, the U.S. and Israel signed a confidential, far-reaching joint memorandum, which basically was providing for full cooperation to deal with Iran, with Iran's nuclear drive, its missile programs, and its other threatening activities. Now, the Times of Israel wouldn't report something against itself, meaning this seems pretty accurate based on the fact that you can go back and look at Trump's actions in relation with Israel. Trump had this plan with Israel, 4-step kind of plan, and had 4 different points in which they were going to focus on how to stop Iran, because they saw Iran as the biggest threat to the allies of Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United States. So this document was signed in the White House and was a culmination of these intense talks between these representatives of the major Israeli and American intelligence and defense hierarchies. One of them was named H.R. McMaster, and he was the U.S. National Security Advisor, and the other one was Meir Ben Shabbat, who was the Israeli National Security Advisor. During this time, Israel set out a joint agreement on strategy and policy, and they specifically agreed to set up several teams that were going to focus on different parts of the Iranian threat. So team number 1 would deal with the Iranian activity in Syria and agreeing to set up joint teams to handle specifically how Iran was a threat in coalition with Syria. They would also deal with the Iranian activity in specifically Tehran's support for Hezbollah's terror organization. Team 2 would deal with both the diplomatic and intelligence activities designed to grapple with Iran's nuclear weapons ambitions. So these activities would be mainly dealing with the nuclear arms that Iran would have and their allies. Team number 3 would focus on Iran's ballistic missile program and its efforts to build accurate missile systems. This is like weapons of mass destruction along the same lines of Syria and Lebanon. And just want to note that Soleimani had a very positive relationship with Bashar al-Assad. They were both Shiite. They were both secular, which it's a loose term, but they had a lot in common. The Lebanese people and the Syrian people and the Iranian people and the Iraqi people have looked at Soleimani as a hero for being instrumental in the defeat of ISIS and Al-Qaeda forces. So to them, he was one of their heroes. The United States did not like that relationship. It was mentioned in talks between Donald Trump and Israel. And team number 4 would then oversee the preparation for any escalation between Iran and or Hezbollah. Netanyahu had been a staunch opponent of the Iran nuclear deal before it was even passed, and he traveled directly to Washington, D.C. to pretty much vocalize his opposition into Congress so they wouldn't pass it. And Saudi Arabia also made vocal their opposition to the Iran nuclear deal. So you can see the aligning of Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the conservative part of the United States. But in February of last year, of 2019, Netanyahu had stated that Israel wanted war with Iran and was planning on it. He also made several threats to Soleimani there, if we recall, and Israel was pretty much ready to wage war against Iran. And that's long been known. They see them as a threat to the Middle East. Israel has continued expanding their occupation, not just their intent isn't just Palestine. Their intent is the entire of the Middle East. It's one of the reasons why people are advocating for BDS, are advocating for, getting rid of such an ethno-state. After this happened, after Soleimani was assassinated, the Trump administration 100% went off and primarily focused on saying that they were avoiding war by attacking Soleimani. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo claimed that Iranian General Qasem Soleimani was planning, quote, imminent attacks on U.S. interests when he was assassinated. Trump said, quote, we took action last night to stop a war. We did not take action to start a war. So this was their claim. That's what they've stuck to this whole time. The attack, is worth noting, also killed Iraqi militia commander Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, who was an advisor to Soleimani and also instrumental in defeating ISIS and other extremist groups. The Gray Zone did a report 2 years ago in 2017 when these minority groups were thanking Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis for also fighting against ISIS and the remnants of Al-Qaeda. So he, like Soleimani, was seen as a hero in Iraq. Recently, though, while addressing his country's parliament, the Iraqi Prime Minister, Adil Abdul Mahdi, refutes the idea that Soleimani was killed because he was an imminent threat. He refutes this as a lie. Reportedly, he had planned to meet Soleimani on the morning that Soleimani was killed to discuss diplomatic peace talks that Iraq, as the mediator, had been pushing between Iran and Saudi Arabia. There was this meeting in Parliament, and Mustafa Salim goes on Twitter to pretty much explain that how this went down. And I'm just going to kind of read a little bit of it. He says that that the Prime Minister said, I received a phone call from Donald Trump when the embassy protests ended, thanking the government efforts and asked Iraq to play the mediator's role between U.S. and Iran. And if we recall, everybody was applauding Trump for staving off issues with Iran for a while. Then he goes on to say, at the same time, American helicopters and drones were flying without approval of Iraq, and we refused the request of bringing more soldiers to U.S. embassies and bases. And then he says, I was supposed to meet Soleimani morning the day he was killed. He came to deliver a message from Iran, responding to the message we delivered from Saudi to Iran. Donald Trump was thanking him and kind of praising these peace talks while they were in the process of targeting Soleimani. Basically, he is counteracting what Donald Trump is saying, but ultimately the parliament voted on not binding, on a decision not binding on government. They want to cancel the Iraqi request from the U.S. in fighting ISIS at the end of the existence of the whole foreign troops within the timeline. So they're not going to stop their relationship with the United States, but they're also not approving what went on. And if we look at everything that has led up to this point, this didn't just happen overnight. And I think that's important people note. This didn't just happen out of nowhere where it's so easy for Donald Trump and the majority of the Pentagon and people like Pompeo to say, yeah, like, sure, we're gonna say that we were under attack. The reality is that we don't know who this mercenary or this contractor was. And Max Blumenthal summarizing the issue very clearly on his latest article in the Gray Zone, where he says, quote, "No president in recent history has been despised more viscerally by the Beltway press corps than Donald Trump. Nearly everything he says is met with disdain and suspicion, even when he is telling the truth. But when Trump and his administration attempt to lie the public into war against a designated evildoer, a swath of the corporate media responds with reflective trust, then shrugs when the lie is exposed in broad daylight." So, again, this was a meeting with Parliament in Iraq, and they are contradicting what Donald Trump, the Pentagon, and the United States government have ultimately said about how it went down, how they killed Soleimani. From Mint Press, I want to point out that the details of the contractor who killed this general are still murky. Whitney Webb says the American killed and the identity of the company he or she was working for have not been released. Some media reports have referred to the contractor as a, quote, Pentagon contractor, while others have used the term civilian contractor, leading some to speculate that the contractor might have been a private mercenary in the employment of the Pentagon. Is all this a coincidence? Because we see Israel's hand in here. We see how for the longest time they have wanted to wage war with Iran, how there's been assassination attempts into Soleimani and into other Iranian and Iraqi leaders that they see posing a threat. Is this, the axes of power lining up? And that's what it seems like to me, that this is like the axis of Israel, pretty much, with the United States and Saudi Arabia. You can speculate if those peace talks were, whether the Saudis even wanted peace talks, or if they also knew what was going down. We don't know as far as that goes. But as far as the allyship between Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States current government, the current Trump administration, we can say that that has been an ongoing situation with our own neoconservative government here. Iran, for all how we vilify it and how we paint them as these threatening aggressors, this huge military threat, we also dismiss them as being incompetent. We dismiss them as not being able to have democracy on their own. We sanction them in the name of democracy, yet they are a huge threat, and it just doesn't make sense. Either they're a threat or they're somebody that we need to promote democracy to. It's one or the other, and it seems like the United States didn't get their story straight this time. It's a blatant disregard for how the American public is going to view it, because nobody's buying the story. Nobody's buying it. There have been protests. There are hundreds of thousands of people protesting in Iran. Some claim it's going to be millions of people in the funerals. That doesn't scream as somebody who is what we would describe as a horrible person, a dictator, or a criminal, the usual words to describe our adversaries. So I wanted to break that down, because I don't believe that the Western media has been fair at all. But I do see that the majority of independent media and the majority of people aren't buying the story, especially when the United States has an economy that is suffering, in working class wise, stagnant wages, huge debt. We are in the middle of an election. And this, I think, is kind of just showing how desperate the U.S. empire is in maintaining their hold, because if anything, all they've accomplished at this point is to strengthen the ties between Iran and Iraq. These things wouldn't have necessarily been possible without this attack. They have built solidarity with each other after this attack. And so what we're seeing here is the United States has made a sort of move that is of a novice chess player who is just thinking about the reaction, the immediate gratification of killing your knight. But they haven't looked 10 moves ahead and said, these are the moves I'm going to make to actually do what I need to do. Instead, this has actually helped their opponents, Iran and Iraq, in building trust and solidarity with each other. And it has all but instigated a sort of axis of power with Iran, Russia, and Iraq, and the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. And all of this is going to unravel in the days to come and the months to come. But it is something that we need to know, that this is completely backfired on the United States. And I think Donald Trump can no longer hold on to the I'm an anti-interventionist appeal that he had with some people that he has now entirely lost. And he is doubling down on his small echo chamber of a base that is really for the more jingoistic, more G.I. Joe type of mentality. But that's not going to win him the election either. The same way we criticize Democratic establishment going for their echo chamber, identity politics, centrist views, the right has those echo chambers as well. And the American people, I think, are seeing right through this. So I just wanted to go over that. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. We are doing a GoFundMe to be able to cover these primaries and see what goes down there, because we love going on the ground. And we will post a link up. But also follow us on Rockfin. It is a cryptocurrency platform. It is wonderful. You can just sign up for free. We're going to be doing the debates this January there. We're constantly posting there. It is growing. It is getting better. And it doesn't have the shenanigans that YouTube has. So thank you guys for watching. As always, we love and appreciate you. Convo out.